Hope you're having a great day, and welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We appreciate you joining us today. I'm thrilled to be here as we continue to celebrate the men and women who are working so hard in the trenches every single day to make coastal Mississippi, and Mississippi for that matter, such a great place to live, work, and play. Hey, no big speeches to give today. I just want to move over to my friend Hunter Dawkins, and he's the owner and the publisher of the Gazebo Gazette and a contributor to SuperTalk Mississippi News. Got a lot of different things to talk about today, and I look forward to chatting with him. Before we go any further, let me just say good morning or good afternoon to you, Hunter. How you doing, my friend?
Ricky, good afternoon. It's always fun and adventurous to talk with you.
Yeah, it's a good time. I enjoy watching you, as I often refer to my friend Cal Curley, the producer of the show. You're a jack of all trades. You're involved in everything. As we talked about many times, to be publisher of a newspaper, a local newspaper, and a website, and to contribute the way you are toward SuperTalk Mississippi News, man, you got to do a bunch. You got to be hitting on a bunch of different cylinders. Yeah.
And I was lucky, Ricky, that both of my parents were public servants for long periods of time. And I think that I got that attitude of what it's like to be in public service and providing for the community.
Yeah, well, you certainly feel that way. Hey, tell people, we often skip past this, but let's not do this today. I want to remind people who don't know about the Gazebo Gazette. What is it? Where is it? How do you get access to it online? Talk about that.
7 years ago, I bought the paper that was produced after Hurricane Katrina. I think Evelina Burnett very well as Jace Ponder, that ran the paper for the first, 8, I guess I could say 12 years, because we're currently in our 19th year. I know I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when we get to number 20, with the celebration and all. But we are a weekly newspaper released every Friday. We're all around the West Harrison County community, and I also have a few friends and businesses in East Gulfport and some in Biloxi, and even a little slither in Jackson County. But we primarily distribute in the Bay St. Louis, Pass Christian, which is where my main office is Pass Christian, and it's what we're always going to be known as, being the Pass Christian paper. But we also represent Long Beach and part of West Gulfport.
Wow, yeah. Go ahead.
And as far as that would be on the print format, and if you're looking forward to being a digital subscriber, which I have a lot more, virtually there was no digital subscribers when I bought the paper. Now there's over, I believe, 4,000 digital subscribers to get our version of E-type editions, and that is pretty much distributed from all walks of life, from people all over the place. But you can find, if you want to get a subscription to the newspaper, even though I do have a website which I keep up with some news, just like, your average newspapers. But the website is thegazebogazette.com. And if you want to take a look at that, the website, you can go there and you can eventually subscribe there. The online subscriptions are $25 for the entire year. You get 52 editions. And if you want to print subscribe, if you live on the Gulf Coast, it's $40. And if you live anywhere else, it's $45 if you live in Mississippi, and $50 if you live outside of the state.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, man. I have a lot of friends that are in the weekly business, and you kind of found your niche even in the digital world. Not that you don't have a digital extension of what you do, because you clearly do. Sure. But, we've gotten away from this, knowing and appreciating and reminding ourselves that most politics are local. People want to be engaged in their local community. And you try to make sure that people are informed about the issues that are taking place in the local communities that you cover. And that's really important to you, isn't it?
Yes, sir, absolutely. But even so, from the local format, I enter into a lot of these gubernatorial press conferences or upper state level people that are in office, upper state level, when they hold press conferences, media press conferences. I know most of the staff, and just because of my time working in Jackson and Washington D.C., and that gives me the ability to keep in contact with those people. And generally, during those press conferences, I ask local questions. Well, how is this going to affect our area? So that gives a little bit easier plat line for me to be able to write a story on that.
Yeah, it's really good. And then when you add to that the fact that you stay very much up to speed on what's happening over in New Orleans with the Saints and with the Pelicans. You pay close attention to what's happening at Southern Miss. In fact, I pulled up at Super Talk this morning. I pulled up the section. What you can do is go to Super Talk Mississippi Media. You can either search his name, as Kyle quickly reminded us, or you can click on sports. But when you see a story that's written by Hunter, you can click on his name, and all of the stories written by Hunter will pop up. And so what I see here is Southern Miss basketball. I see a little bit of Pelicans. I see a lot of Saints. You go back even further, you've got Southern Miss football. You've got a wide range of issues. And then, you've talked about issues that are important in Mississippi, like the healthcare disaster that we've had to deal with in this state and so on. But you've got a lot of passions. And again, you're a jack of all trades. I don't know how you do it, Hunter. I really don't.
Thank you, Ricky. I certainly appreciate that. And, as much as I can provide for the community, it's as you've known that. You and I have discussed that. That's the important part of where we're at in this world.
Well, listen, I've said this a lot on this show, and I think it's important to remind people of this. SuperTalk's news effort is a really good news effort. We have contributing columnists, we have a news staff. Not only does it go to the 26 radio stations that are part of the SuperTalk Mississippi Media, there are 12 stations that are part of the SuperTalk network, and then another 14 radio stations that are various music genres. So 26 total radio stations. And then on top of that, we have another, 24 radio stations or 25 radio stations that are not owned by SuperTalk, but are actually part of the network. So they have an ag network, they have a news network, and that news network, when news is made on our shows or news is made in this state, the news team gets their head around that, and so it goes in the form of voice news that goes into the radio stations. It also becomes news on our website, supertalk.fm. And whereas a lot of, and you know this, Hunter, this does not apply to you, but whereas a lot of the major statewide organizations or news outlets are spending too much time reporting news that comes from all over the country in their local news feeds, SuperTalk doesn't do that. When you go to supertalk.fm and sign up for the newsletter, or you get the app, or you go to supertalk.fm and just read the news that's there, it's Mississippi news all the time. It's a terrific effort. And I'm thrilled that you're one of the contributors to that effort. And with that said, actually, the Senior Bowl is about to take place in Mobile, and as we know from the Saints' participation of that, we have found some gold nuggets in the Senior Bowl because the way the Saints are engaged in that. You're actually going to be a fully credentialed reporter over there covering that for SuperTalk, and I say for yourself as well. I'm excited to see you doing that.
Well, and Ricky, that's an important game. That's next to, now that the college football season is done, it's an important factor not only for the NFL teams, but for these personal individual kids getting out there and giving them their best. For instance, in Mississippi, Boogie Watson, not too many people down here or NFL level know that name, but he was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year from Mississippi State. Even though Mississippi State didn't have a great year, he had a great year, and that's a ability for him to showcase his talent to these NFL scouts or coaches that are there.
Well, it's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting to see your coverage from that because always amazing players emerge into the professional ranks that come out of the Senior Bowl. I enjoyed when I was publisher in Mobile when the Senior Bowl took place because we had the opportunity. We were a major sponsor. We went to the luncheon with the players, and as you know, I mean, there's a lot of activities over there. It's not just a game. Sort of, they've got the practice, but there's the city just rolls out the red carpet, and the kids are heavily involved. And it's just good to see. I mean, the entire community has their arms around the Senior Bowl, and there have been opportunities along the way to maybe lose that, but they've really stayed focused on it, and it's as strong as it's ever been. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette and from SuperTalk Mississippi Media. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have my friend Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette, and someone I really enjoy checking in with. Incidentally, Hunter, when you pull up supertalk.fm, you have the ability with the finger to kind of move from story to story on the featured part of this. And one of the lead stories is hotel that Elvis used as a vacation spot and Capone as a hideaway. It's a story about Guff Hills. Boy, Coast of Mississippi's got a lot of history attached to it, doesn't it?
Exactly, and that's something that Super Talk does very well, and they really get some people involved in the stories, and they find things out. Both Caleb and Alyssa and JT are leading the charge up there. So
it's a terrific team. They're doing a great job. Hey, listen. So the Saints. We'll kind of break it all down and go through several bits and pieces of this. I noticed I just got a breaking news story about P. Carmichael, the former offensive coordinator for the Saints. Jeff Duncan had suggested that he might go to Denver, because of his relationship with Sean Payton, and in fact he is. He's headed to Denver. But he understands his role as sort of that number two in an offensive role. He never really wanted to be the offensive coordinator at the Saints. So interesting chain of events.
More importantly, Ricky, is not just Pete, was our assistant scouting director, Cody Rager. He left pretty much to be the director of scouting over there and the assistant general manager, at least. And that's very important because I guess Sean is starting to realize, well, you know what? This worked for me over in New Orleans. So anytime they get rid of people, just bring them over here. And that's an important thing that we have to start to realize. And, we're going to have to play the Broncos this year.
Hey, listen, let's be clear, though. On the personnel side, we didn't get rid of anybody. we had one of the best personnel teams in the league. And so we fully expect there to be cherry picking because they've made, we don't always hit 100%. No one does, but we've had tremendous success finding the diamonds in the rough down in the draft. And I don't blame people for wanting to come and get them. And, of course, in Sean Payton's case, he has full awareness of who's there and who he wants to have on his team, and he can offer them promotions. And, how do you fight that?
How do you turn that down exactly? And I'm not necessarily sure. I haven't heard about – I know that there was some process of Jeff Ireland, the scouting director, having the interview with the Chargers for the GM job, but I haven't heard anything forward for that. So
nothing new there, but what they had said is the guy who went to Denver would have been potentially his replacement if Jeff Ireland were to be taken. So if we lose both of those guys, that's going to be a big blow to the Saints. But I've also heard stories that they're zeroing in on some possibilities as it relates to the offensive coordinator. Some of the guys that were maybe first and second, maybe even third on the list that the Saints had identified and at least begun some conversations with have all been picked by other teams to go to other teams. So it's been I guess as someone who's been paying a little bit closer attention to, a little bit frustrating really that the Saints have not been able to attract their guy. How close have you been following that?
Well, I do know that Ronald Curry, the quarterback's coach, has got a lot of he's getting a lot of really appreciation. He got an interview from Mickey and the rest of that group. That they are probably going to lean towards that direction. And Ronald Curry was brought in a few years ago and has done a pretty fantastic job with what he was given. And so, and I think, Drew liked him too back in the day, because I think he came in Drew's one of his last years, and
it's
that not so much. It's trying to build a new system, because that's the reason we got rid of Carmichael, because it was Sean Payton's old system that we held on to for too long, pretty much. And it's going to be somebody that can develop a new system. And I'm anxious to see where we're going with that.
They're up to 10 candidates they have considered, 10 candidates. And, they're wanting to be very legitimate about the process. But if they, it's tough right now because it has so many openings in the NFL. It's a tough scenario where you're trying to find your guy, and you want to be smart about it. You want to take your time. But at the same time, when all these other teams are looking too, you run the risk that you're going to lose your guy if you start to really zero in. It's a tough process.
Well, Ricky, as you and I also know this is a business. It's about money. And, just because the Saints want this guy, maybe they don't have the money to offer this one direction or the other one. Maybe the candidate wants to go there, but when they're offered more money to go here, and there's a better opportunity that they get access to becoming a head coach, that's another issue.
Here's the other thing, and I think it's something you got to think about. Where you think about Harbaugh going to the Chargers, or you think about Sean Payton, both of those guys are probably going to be in those jobs for a while. I mean, they're not on 1-year deals. They're in a building process, and Harbaugh's brought in to take their very talented quarterback and do something with him, and he's going to be a winner in the league. I mean, does anyone doubt that Sean Payton, once he gets his team built around him, is going to be a good coach?
Absolutely.
So what I think plays into the decision that's a little frustrating for a fan is the fact that with Dennis Allen, he may just have another year. So when you're making a decision about whether you're going to join him or not, you're doing it based on what's the runway look like? How much time do I have to build a winner? And you may only have a year. If Dennis Allen doesn't knock it out of the park, he may not have a job, and the whole deck could get shuffled again. And I'm sure that plays into the decision making of potential, offensive coordinator candidates.
Well, of course. Well, and you have to look at the fact is, when he was with the Raiders, he got fired halfway during his third season. And so, then what if that same scenario happens? Is that offensive coordinator ready to become a head coach? That is a warning, I think, in some of the individuals. I'm not necessarily sure. I'm not saying that they do not want that job, but there's a lot of testing there, and they have to develop a new offensive game plan. This is pretty much Mickey and Dennis pretty much tell them, look, you come in, you develop this game plan, we're going to go with it.
Let's shift gears on the Pelicans. It's been an interesting season. They've not had the real serious injury bugs like they've had in the last 2 or 3 years. Zion has come on strong, and then he's kind of fallen off a little bit. They scored one game recently 153 points.
Yeah.
They've got some great young players. They've got some good talent. They've got some good leadership. As Willie Green recently explained, he wants the team to be more mature after the most recent collapse. But when you think they start to get their feet underneath them, they start to they prove they're the team that they were a few weeks ago. It's pretty frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, Ricky, I think with the Pelicans, they need to find either in the trade deadline coming up on February the 13th or sometime during the season, they need to find a player that that's going to help them with momentum. Jose Alvarado was a great defensive player a few years ago and has still continued his defense, but you can't. He's not ready to play on a starting role in a full-time role yet. Trey Murphy is a great three-point shooter, but he's only good at certain period of time. Herb Jones is a good defensive player, but they don't have that one player that can help them get over the momentum, whether it be Zion, BI, or CJ. Those are the trio is what they would call them, or what David Griffin would call them. But I don't really think that they need somebody to help them cover that momentum.
You know, when Zion is on, man, it's hard to stop him. In the case of if you look back at the games over this past weekend, they were beat by two really good teams, but with Boston, they blew an early lead. There was a point in the Boston game where you thought, man, they're going to put it all together in this game, and then of course it gets down to the stretch, and they end up losing the game. And it's extremely disappointing losses. I mean, the Pelicans are now sitting at 26-21 overall. They're 12-11 on the road. They've had they've had moments of brilliance. It will be very interesting to see what they do in the trade arena, like you pointed out. I wonder what they're thinking.
Well, I'm really thinking that David Griffin wants a big man down low that can be a defender. They tried to do that with Cody Zeller, picking him up from the Heat. Cody Zeller is not much of any kind of player, let alone being and Jonas Valanciunas is their guy, but he's a scoring guy. He's not a defender at all. And so that's what I'm thinking they're looking for, a big guy that can provide some defense.
Yeah, it'd be so important for them to get that. It's hard to see the lack of defense, hard to watch the lack of defense. Let me put it that way. Hey, we'll come back on the other side with Hunter Dawkins. We'll kind of zero into Mississippi for a second. Talk about Southern Miss. I'm curious about how can Southern Miss build winners in the day of NIL. It's going to be interesting to see what our friend Hunter has to say about that. We'll see at this on the other side after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. I'm my friend Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. He's also a contributor to SuperTalk Mississippi News. Writes a wide variety of not only news stories for sports, but also writes a column from time to time about topics that are important to him. But as I have said so many times, Hunter is hitting on a bunch of cylinders, and we're lucky to have him associated with our team. That is for sure. You know, I've had some terrific conversations recently with members of the Sports Talk Mississippi gang. That we've got some of the most talented sports casters in Mississippi, if not the most talented group. And the podcasts that they have are all incredibly successful, I might add. But they own the conversation when it comes to sports talk. They've spent a lot of time recently, though, talking about with Nick Saban leaving Alabama, there's kind of a feeding frenzy in this world. So Nick Saban in the not pre-NIL days, he could build these amazing teams and continue to win, and arguably had a good season this year, especially when you consider some of the challenges they had, especially at quarterback. But with him out, there's a bit of feeding frenzy out there now. You got teams like Texas that will be coming into the SEC. They're going to hit the ground running in the SEC, building a powerhouse. And just a really interesting conversation about the role that supporters of the university play now, the amount of money that it takes to be successful, the role that even us as ticket buyers will have to play going forward, so that our teams can be competitive. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a good cooperative and you're not playing ball in the NIL and you don't have money to attract players, you're not going to win in this league. So I want to bring that down to Southern Miss, but before I do, what's your sort of kind of elevator speech on your observations about where we are in college football these days?
Well, as I'm sure I remember Michael Borky and Richard talking with you, Ricky. It was generally, I think both of their focus was on recruiting. That's more or less where you're going to get the avenue to build programs, and not only to build programs, but to be able to do something, that can process your university. Southern Miss had a great year this year recruiting wise from a high school level. Now, I'm not necessarily sure a step in the direction needs to be made, but from that level, Southern Miss has done quite an interesting job, at least from recruiting level, right at the ballpoint right now. So, and you've got a 12-team playoff, which that's another factor that's going to help bring in this group of 5 conferences to be able to produce talented teams.
Hey, we had just a little skip in what you were saying, just for people that wasn't your radio, a little Wi-Fi blip, no problem there. But it's going to be hard for a Southern Miss to compete in the world. And one of the points that Michael Borky said is if you have an opportunity to get an unproven, really talented kid, or you got an opportunity to attract a really proven, mature kid. He said, some of these guys that they're bringing onto their teams are mature. They're men. Some are married with kids, and some have been, playing for 4 years. So I would say the more successful your program, the more opportunities you have to attract from other teams some really, really good players that are going to help you win quick. We talked about Ole Miss and the work that they've done. They don't like the NIL, but they're playing well in that league. But how does a Southern Miss survive in this world?
Well, first off, to answer your question, I don't know why Ole Miss doesn't like the NIL. They have done better in the NIL era the last 2 years than they ever have as a program. And I'm not necessarily saying that they should endorse that opportunity, but I mean, I'm definitely not, in favor of them being against that, because that brings the Ole Miss program at the same level.
Hey, just real quick, so just if people are clear, he doesn't like, and he said it, how NIL has changed football. He wished that wasn't the case, but since that is the way it is, we're going to be the best at it, and they have proven that they're really good at it.
They have Lane Kiffin, coach, has done a great job over there with that, and he is definitely of the type of coach that would help with the transfer portal, NIL money. That's kind of his philosophy that he's gotten used to, and he's certainly done a great job of that. With Southern, it's, you really have to build it from the ground up. You really have to start with, like they did with their high school and their junior college recruiting, at least from this level. They're building at a slow level. Now, I'm hoping that they can get some transfer portal sometime soon. They do have a great quarterback that came in from Florida State that looks like he's going to compete for the starting job over there. You're never really sure what's going to happen, because I think that, Coach Will Hall said, there was a big plus, at least last year when he came in with these 2 transfer quarterbacks who didn't really amount to much at all. But that being said, you have to build it from the ground up. And I think once you get to a group of 5 level team that you can really compete at that level, because of the 12-team playoff, you have a really good chance.
Hey, listen, what's interesting to me, and I'll never think anything other than this, because I spent time in Mobile and I watched the emergence of University of South Alabama, not only as a really well thought out campus and the stadium and all the work that they did, but also the football program. The moment they started that football program and went at it as seriously as they did, they're cherry picking from the same, areas that Southern Miss would typically get football players from. So, the fact that USA has done well has been to some extent at Southern Miss's detriment. So where Southern Miss's focus has to be is on continuing to recruit.
And where does it come, Ricky? Yeah. Where does it come from? Recruiting, because Kane Womack was a USM graduate that played at USM, and he had that established relationship with those quality players. But also, too, you have high quality staff. Major Applewhite, who was the OC, who got promoted after Kane after he moved over as the DC of the University of Alabama. And of course, people are wondering why he did that. And I'm like, well, you obviously don't necessarily know the business of college football now, where it's money and potential future head coaching jobs at the certain level. But at that same right, he was making sure that he took care of the area. And USA had just as many kids this year on their defense from South Mississippi as USM did.
I know, and unfortunately, when Will Hall was named the head coach, one of the real benefits of Will Hall is that he came from a lineage that had connections into high schools all across the state, and that was supposed to be an advantage. But to some extent, he kind of lost a little bit of that advantage, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think it's more of the old school connection, and I know that for myself, trying to be able to reach out to individuals across the state. But I think Will has done a pretty good job of revamping that and using his college connections through Coach Norvell when he coached under him and University of Memphis. Then when he coached under Coach Fritz at Tulane, he's trying to use a lot more of that avenue rather than just by his dad's legendary high school status in Mississippi.
Yeah, he certainly got to build it himself. I went to the homecoming game. Southern Miss has done a really good job of making the fan experience before the games, improving it, making it better. I like the way they've, created great common space for people to set up their tents and all that. That's going to be a good part of Southern Miss's legacy as it relates to that experience. But it also gave me an opportunity to chat with a bunch of people. And, President Joe Paul came by and visited with us for a little bit. You can tell, man, the natives are restless at Southern Miss. They expected last year to be a better year than it was. And I think that, the fact that Joe Paul came out pretty quickly after the season and said, we're sticking, he's our guy, Will Hall's our guy, we're going to give him an opportunity. I wondered, though, how much runway he's going to have.
Well, and I really do. Dr. Paul is obviously a good man from down here on the coast originally. And just like with Coach Ladner before last year, he'd had a really rough go for the first 2 or 3 years at least. And what he said and what Coach Jay Ladner, who's the men's basketball coach, said after one of their recent wins over one of the top ranked teams in the United States, James Madison, he said this was really a true grit, what Dr. Paul said, and he gave a speech where he included this is USM's true grit. We can stand up with, we can, stay loyal to our following, and we can trust the avenue that we're headed to is the right way. And of course, the baseball team has done phenomenal the last 4 or 5 years. They've had predominant success, and they have a lot of kids from the coast on the team.
Yeah, baseball's done well. I mean, as you look across all the sports, Southern Miss has really represented themselves well. It's just that the rules on the football side have changed dramatically, and it's what have you done for me today is what matters.
Absolutely.
And it will be interesting to see how this year goes and whether Coach Will Hall can kind of put it all together. Hey, when we come back with my friend Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette, we'll talk about what else is going on in our world in the final segment. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. Hey, listen, I had a book sent to me some time ago by my friend Lenny Sawyer of Sawyer Real Estate, and it's a book called Biloxi Gamble by Brian Bolus. Brian was actually involved in the early days of the casino development here in coastal Mississippi, and mostly from memory, he just shares his story. It's a nice little paperback book, about 180-something pages long. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it now, and he sent it to me a while back, but it just got buried with a lot of other books that I needed to catch up on. And I'll have Brian Bolus on the show pretty soon to kind of tell his story. It's interesting. It's a very interesting story, and whether I'm talking to Rick Carter or Terry Green or Bobby Mahoney or Gerald Blessey, everyone has sort of a different sort of perspective on the developments that occurred here in coastal Mississippi. It's great telling those stories, a reminder of what it took to pull this off, especially after Hurricane Katrina, to get special legislation to create land-based gaming. So anyway, yeah, I'll have Brian Bolus on the show pretty soon to talk about his book, Biloxi Gamble. Okay, coming back to my friend Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. Hunter, it's really interesting. In this day of being able to collect millions of dollars from your boosters and the NIL and how that's operated, name, image, and likeness sort of kind of fell to the wayside where we're recruiting teams and pulling from these cooperatives, in some cases millions of dollars. The strong teams are going to get stronger, and the not so strong teams, they could get weaker as a result of this. We don't really know how that's going to play out. Of course, the NFL recognized this. This is why they created parity. And what it enabled is a team like New Orleans or Green Bay to be able to compete with Miami and L.A. and San Francisco and the New York teams. And I think that they did a really good job of creating parity. They have done a really good job of sharing revenue and doing all the things they needed to do. I wonder if the NCAA will one day try to consider some kind of adjustments to all this to create a little bit more parity.
Well, based on the Supreme Court ruling allowing, gambling a few years ago, that's really undermined anything and allowing NIL development. That really undermined any sanctions that were placed out by the NCAA, and that pretty much put the NCAA on just a mere okay, well, they can attempt to enforce something, but it's going to be appealed to an upper level court, and it's almost always defeated. And I like what I believe Michael or Richard said one time, that they're now known as the organization NCAA that is great at losing lawsuits. That's one of the things that they're great at. So.
Well, the lawsuits did lead them to a place where they're weaker. That's for sure. And Michael Borky and Steve and Richard Cross are quick to point that out. The cat may be out of the bag and they may not be pulling it back. It may be, if you're great at rallying your boosters and collecting a lot of money, and your boosters are willing to, as they have in places like Ole Miss, contribute millions of dollars so we can be competitive now, power to you. You see Alabama doing that, Texas doing that. Texas A&M, you just could go. Auburn's doing it really well now with Hugh Freeze as the coach. That may just be the way it's going to be from now on, And by the way, I was a proponent of paying the kids.
Of course.
The one point that Michael Borky made, though, is that maybe what we need is the players to become employees, and that would kind of change the situation.
There has to be a salary cap. We can't be like Major League Baseball where there's no salary cap and then you can pretty much go and spend whatever. That's one of the reasons that makes successful the NFL is because they have a salary cap. They have teams that have to go within this luxury salary, which even though they can kind of bend it off as the Saints have for the last 3 or 4 years, it makes it a little bit more of a business atmosphere. And as Coach Lane Kiffin said, we're a business now. We're not, even though we're technically student athletes and coaches for public universities, at the utmost, we're employees and we are a business. And that's what we have to treat it like.
Hey, Hunter, remind people what Title IX was and what are the Title IX implications you think going forward?
Well, I'm not exactly 100% clear on that, but to try to give you the 5th grade version, Ricky, is that all sports in the NCAA in colleges have to be able to receive the same amount of money federally in all sports, regardless of the gender, male or female. They don't get more, they don't get less. They are provided this federal money from the same sports, at least. So that's my understanding.
Yeah, what I think going forward is that football's always paid the bills. Football's going to continue to pay the bills. It will be interesting to see if there are eventually some Title IX implications, in that some of the women's sports are not carrying their weight. That's certainly been true for a long time, but that's for another day. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend. I hope you have a great week.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to send you some pictures at the Senior Bowl, because there's going to be certainly a quite number of good players out there.
Yeah, man, it's going to be fun. I think you're going to enjoy all the festivities around it as well. This has been Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.